Welcome back into another episode of Preacher in the Hat. My name is Derek.
I'm 6 feet from the edge and I'm thinking,
Chris, we talked about
maybe
this.
6 feet ain't so far down.
Hold me now. I'm 6 feet from the edge and I'm thinking, maybe 6 feet ain't so far down.
Come on, preacher!
Hold me now. I'm 6 feet from the edge and I'm thinking, maybe 6 feet ain't so far down.
Okay.
Sure glad I showed up.
Yeah, just in time. A little context, because you need it. The group went to a, when I say the group, the four, I wasn't even through the introduction. I'm Derek. That's Eric's. My father Steve's across from me. Chris is behind the cameras and but on the microphone tonight, as you have.
Forked tongues and bitter mouths drive a man
As you-
bleed
he's-
from inside out.
And he's stuck in Scott Stapp
he's
voice
got-
for the last week and a half.
The podcast crew went to a Creed concert in Birmingham, pretty recently. So that has been on the forefront, as you can tell.
of all of our conversations.
Most of the conversations. And if you're not familiar at all with Creed, the lead singer's got a very distinctive voice, and that's where some of that little wildness came through. But that's one of their songs. Actually, one of kind of a depressing song if you think about it. But
Yeah, it actually is.
yeah, we had a good time. We're gonna get into some of the details of that experience because it was there was a little bit of everything, I think, from that. And fortunately, Chris has a microphone. Maybe unfortunately, Chris also has a microphone. It's like there's two sides of that coin. But we did the absolute unthinkable tonight, and we let Chris Sumter plan an episode. So if
you couldn't tell by how it
you
started.
if you hate it, it's on Chris. If you love it, it's on us.
Yeah, we'll take the credit.
We will take all of the credit and none of the blame.
Well, if we can pull off an episode that Chris plans, we need a little bit of credit. How about that?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Because we use the term plans very, very loosely.
Very loosely.
In that
Very loosely.
he cobbled together a voice text to us.
Yeah.
Earlier this morning,
With a
trying
bunch of
to
run-on
explain
sentences.
with a bunch of run-on sentences what this episode was going to be about. Thankfully, I had a prior conversation with him at church on Sunday, so I got the fields watered at least a little bit for myself, but that was not helpful to either of you two gentlemen. And even then, I was still a little bit in the dark on what exactly.
Yeah. And
what
then
direction
we found
wanted
out
to
he
go.
wanted to sing a part on the
That's
podcast,
correct.
to which we were like, no, let's not do that. And we know how that ended up.
we ended
Because
up
he's
doing
got
it.
a hot mic, and that was.
But there is a
that's all she
story to
wrote
tell.
there.
So that
Yeah, there
part
is.
we know that fits our mission.
Yeah,
There's
so
a story to tell.
Yeah, I mean,
Some things are
it-
best
we're-
told in story
we're
form.
We're gonna get to all of that. I'm struggling with where we want to start on this experience.
okay,
because-
so I'll start.
Okay. Yeah.
So it was kind of we went on a Wednesday, and if you are a regular to our show, the last episodes that you have seen were just with our friend, good friend Jeff Shellnut, which we double filmed those two episodes.
That's right.
The night before on Tuesday.
So we were at it pretty late.
And the Thursday before that Tuesday, I completely blew out my back, which I can't remember if we mentioned that in that episode or not. But so even just sitting here Tuesday night, I had my back brace on and all that kind of stuff, was a bit of a challenge.
That was an element that I forgot already.
Yeah.
It's only been.
Yeah.
I completely forgot that
And
you were like hobbled.
Yeah. Like it had been less than a week since I completely blew out my back. And by blew out, I mean could not get off the couch into a sitting position. Like my wife Mikhail was trying to get me to the chiropractor, and she was strong enough to lift me to pull me into a sitting position, but my body was literally like, no, we cannot be in that in a sitting position. That was on Thursday. I was like, there is no way I'm going to be able to go to film a double episode on Tuesday and go to a concert on Wednesday. We did make it happen, but we get out of the car, or we had to park, like, help me out.
We didn't have to park
We
as far
did.
as we did, but we did.
It
How
was
far
free.
away? We parked free far away.
Yeah,
That's
that's a good way to
we
put
parked so far away. the parking was free.
Minimum a quarter of a mile.
Because that's because we have a low preacher in the hat budget. That's what it is.
Yeah,
so.
that's true. There was no parking budget.
And,
was no parking
but
budget.
also the line, like the cars were out on
Onto the interstate.
Yeah, just it was already a parking lot
If
out
you
there. So
live
we just
in the
pulled
area-
into the first lot where the business was closed, and we're like, all right, we'll park here,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that was it. And
Yeah.
we walked away.
So my back was probably, I would say, stable to start the night when we got out of the car. At the end of the night, like I was feeling like some for sure.
No, but remember, so we had a big crosswalk because we parked across the other side of a busy, like 4-lane highway,
And I was like,
and there was
oh, no,
a
I can't
crosswalk,
hustle.
and we're like, Eric, hustle, and you turn back, and he's like, got a grimace on his face. He's like, I think I can do it. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah. So I'm not used to that. I could barely hurry across a sidewalk. Crosswalk. But I mean, it worked out okay. But I know by the end of the night, it was like pulling on me a little bit. But that was when I think of that night, like that's the first thing that comes to mind. And every way that I'm sitting or how I'm sitting, I was not uncomfortable ever. But I was like super conscious of like any move that I would make, because my main thought process was, don't you dare blow out your back.
Yeah.
Sitting in almost the exact middle of this gigantic row inside Oak Mountain Amphitheater and not be able to get up out of your seat and leave.
Yeah. So let's talk about because we're gonna get to some good stuff too, but let's talk about a few of the like not so great parts of the experience.
Okay. Yeah. So setting the stage, you mentioned this is a Creed concert. They were there with Three Doors Down.
Yeah.
Both bands who were very popular, like
2000,
1998
Yeah.
to 2002 was probably like the height of those years. Creed's was famous for a while, quite a long time. I guess both those bands were, but that was really like the height era.
And it's like that time period, that rock sound that you had was just like big driving guitars and that sort of thing.
So it seemed like the crowd reflected that
and
time
so it's
frame.
the crowd that you would expect.
30 to 40-year-olds.
A little bit older than that, it seemed like. I think.
Well, plenty of that though.
Yes,
plenty
yeah,
of
of 30 to 40
and
year
then
and
there
some
was
50s and
and then the occasional younger person thrown in that Chris had some fun experiences with. We'll get to that in just a minute too. But yeah, it's like that typical like randomly chanting USA after somebody says God bless America, just like that sort of thing. People smoking everywhere, like all the time. One of you
don't
guys
think
tell
that
me
that
many people still smoke.
Yes, that's almost exactly what I was going to say. And you guys correct me if I'm wrong, that 50% of the people there were
Everybody in the state of
something.
Alabama who smokes a cigarette was there that
Absolutely.
night.
No, but
what
I
it
saw a
felt
lot of
like.
vaping,
That's what it felt like.
not just cigarettes.
There's vaping, and then there were a few who then took it further than just your normal cigarette, and that would waft over you a few times.
But there was a guy sitting in front of us who vaped the entire.
Yeah.
I mean, 3.5, 4 hours, whatever it was.
Never stopped.
He never stopped
4 hours. We were there 4
vaping
hours.
the entire time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're really just kind of like pointing this down. We're really kind of like just trying to set this. Hopefully, you're getting a good visual of what this is like. It's hot, all right. So it's outside,
An amphitheater bowl.
Yeah. We were, we were in the top half,
Looking
but
down
not-
at the stage.
Yeah, looking down at the stage, but not like all the way up either. We were we had good seats and like a good view of everything. And it didn't feel like we were super far away from the stage.
And it didn't feel as hot as it could sometimes in August.
because it
really
did
for
start.
me.
It did start at 7.
That was nice.
Yeah, so that was a good part of it, and we got there on time, which apparently meant we had to listen to some band I'd never heard of. They were just all right.
Well, I
Finger 11.
Well, I wasn't going to say their name because I didn't want to.
Yeah, I didn't want to offend anybody who might like.
Yeah, we just recognized 0 songs.
Yeah,
so.
recognize no songs. So if you liked them, I'm sorry you missed it. But and then I think it started at like 7:40 or something like that. Ran till about 11.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right around
like
11.
that. I've been to probably not any quite like that, but been to multiple concerts, many concerts throughout the years, and I feel like there's always one person that is having a great time. And I'm talking outside of the group that you're in.
Yeah.
They're having a great time. And they really, really want everyone else around them having the same great time that they're having in the same way that they're having it, if that makes sense. So they essentially force enthusiasm upon you. And
That's
God
what that was,
bless
forced
it. God
enthusiasm.
bless it, because this person was sitting right behind Chris.
If it
I was gonna say-
behind me, they would have never gotten any attention.
I was
don't
going to
think.
say that type of person is always having a great time, and I feel like they're always also ruining it for someone else.
Yes, 100%. All right, Chris, how many times did this dude tap you on the shoulder? Or maybe not even just tap you on the shoulder, but like try to get your attention and talk to you
In some kind of way.
in the 3 hours.
How many times?
Is your mic
Well,
hot?
I'm in therapy
You're
for
good.
it, so
Yeah.
I can't really discuss that right now as the healing has begun. I don't know, man. It's like I know God put him behind me for a reason. I could just never figure out what that reason was.
You'll have to ask him that when you get up there, man. We'll never know.
Because you could have had conversation after conversation with that dude, and he would not have heard a word you said.
Yeah, he was feeling really good, and
I think the worst part about it is, and the worst part about that kind of person, and I know everyone in the world has had an encounter like this, where it's like the more you say something to them, the worse it gets.
Yes.
Now, was there not some other people with him that were engaging with him, or was he kind of by himself?
His
thought it was-
girlfriend or something.
Yeah, somebody was.
a date was with
somebody
him,
else
I
was
think.
engaging because they were singing along. They knew all the words to the songs. I think.
Yeah, like they were enjoying the concert.
I think the line of the night was, well, there's a couple that I can remember, but once he said, he leaned down, got right up in my ear, and he said, "If you don't stand up, Creed's not coming out."
If you don't stand
So-
up, Creed's
sorry,
not
all right.
coming out.
You got to
Gotcha.
understand this too. So we talked about there's multiple bands. The other one was Three Doors Down, which I listened to a lot growing
Yes,
up.
we did.
But Chris was there for Creed.
Right.
Like that was he bought the tickets. To listen.
Children,
Yeah.
don't stop
Yeah,
dancing.
exactly.
Yeah, here we go.
He bought the tickets, but then you also have to understand how Chris enjoys a concert. All right, Chris is not he's not like up on his feet, dancing, moving, all the stuff, whatever. And Chris enjoying a concert looks like another guy standing with his arms crossed, no expression on his face. Like that's how, but he's listening to the music, whatever. That guy could not handle the fact that that's how Chris enjoyed concerts.
Also, that's what the deal was. So
He-
he
Chris
didn't like
was
the
not-
way you were responding.
He didn't like the he liked because this guy I said this at one point because he kept talking during Three Doors Down, which I liked. I'm standing, singing the songs, whatever, and he's like, hey man, you guys stand up, and I'm like, I turn on dude is like, hey man, he's here for Creed and that's it, and the guy's like, oh okay, and he leaves him alone for the rest of Three Doors Down. But then when Creed comes up, that's when he says, hey, if you don't stand up, Creed's not coming out, blah blah blah. And then multiple times, because I told him, I was like, hey, he's here for he's here for Creed. Stop talking.
Right.
And but that led to later on, probably at least 5 times, he yells in your ear. He yells in your ear because I'm right beside Chris, so I hear a lot of this, not all of it. But I was like, "Is this what you came for? Is this what you came for?"
Yeah, I was texting my son actually, and at one point he just kind of reached over and he said, "Is that why you came tonight?" and the line is so classic. I'm like, I enjoyed it. I couldn't even say anything about it. I'm like, dude, that was a great line right there, bro. Whatever.
So you had a love-hate relationship with what was going on, or you just didn't like it at all, Chris?
You talking about with
With that guy?
there's no way you weren't.
I mean, to me, you can't you got to appreciate craziness. You know what I mean? Like if that wasn't a little karma going on, I mean, I think God puts those kind of people in my life because I've been those kind of people in people's lives, know? And so
that's true.
That was like, and it really became sort of one of those things where it was like, I want to know how far he's going to take this. And I want to see.
You
the
got
end
a
of this
different
movie.
personality.
Yeah,
than
I mean,
me.
I was like, this is it. It really was so over the top. I was like, okay, let's see the end of this movie. Yeah. I really wanted to see the end.
I mean, good for then. He was standing behind the right guy because if it was me, that would not.
No,
have-
and I said God had him there because he would have gotten punched in the throat from most by most people.
As much as he touched you, that would have been
Oh, yeah.
triggering for people.
yeah,
For a lot of people.
for sure.
So we're really proud of Chris for the way he handled that.
Were you like old enough to be his dad, or what?
It's strange that you asked me this because I never saw his face.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I literally never.
He
saw
looked
his
young
You
to
couldn't
me.
recognize
I wouldn't
him.
if you put him in a lineup.
He looked young to me when I glanced
young.
around.
He was
back
young.
there.
He was one of the younger guys there, probably.
Yeah, he
I would
was.
say so,
It seemed
too.
like maybe
Yeah.
20s.
That's
maybe
what I thought.
20s.
That's what I thought at most.
He
me
was
too.
one of the
Yeah.
ones
Yeah.
who fired up one of the,
special
alternative
cigarettes.
Them funny cigarettes.
and
And who knows what else he was ingesting? Certainly alcohol, but don't know.
yeah.
Okay, so I didn't know that. That explains a few things.
I hadn't been to a concert in like a really, really long time. And I remember seeing Three Doors Down come out there. And I thought to myself, the price of these tickets, is this the best light show we got? And I don't have anything to compare it to. And then they break. They sing their last song.
Mm-hmm.
And then Creed comes out. And baby, it's on.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, this is the show we've been waiting
So
for.
They don't let you. So Derek and I had a little bit of a conversation about this. I think that stemmed from this actual show, in that they're not going to give the best resources to the opening bands.
Mm-hmm.
Derek, you and I talked about that, like with the actual mix, like the audio mix. from
The
bands.
mix for the opening band that none of us knew the songs was horrible. It was almost like they were trying to
Yes, it's almost
make
like
it not that
It
great.
has to get better with each band
Yeah.
that comes out.
Yeah.
Almost
Yeah.
is what
Yeah.
kind of what it feels like.
Yeah, that because it was like almost there were certain parts of it that was like it was like ear piercing, and you're just like this just doesn't sound good. And I'm thinking like, man, if this is how loud this band's gonna be, like Creed is gonna just leave me deaf for a day.
Right.
I was literally I was preparing myself. I was like, all right, tomorrow I'm not gonna be able to hear anything.
Yeah.
But then like. Down came out. I was like, "Oh man, this is like a
Much
really
smoother.
good." Much,
Yeah.
It was louder, but it was smoother. So like and then Creed was the same way too. But yeah, they don't. I knew the light show was going to be pretty good though when we walked into the gates and there was like signs cautioning you about pyrotechnics or something like that. I was like, "Oh, it should be pretty good."
Yeah.
And yeah,
But I get why you were when you see the first the first band they had like almost none of that. It was basically just like
it was none of that.
yeah,
They didn't have
house
anything.
lights from the stage pointing a little
But
bit.
it
pointing
was
out.
still daytime too. Then you
Right,
still
that's
had
true.
daylight.
That's
So,
true. Three Doors Down had a little bit more of that going on, not much. And then by the time Creed came up, it was dark and it was all over the place. But yeah, it's interesting how the quality changes, like with each level, with each band.
I probably don't know but a couple of Three Doors Down songs, but when he continued to say God bless, I thought that was a little odd. You know what I mean? Not strange to me, but odd from a rock singer. You know what I mean? And then at some point he was like, something I don't talk much, but something's been on my heart. And I'm like, that is an odd thing to say from a rock artist. You know what I mean? I was like, what is and then he went on, but it was really, he kind of got my attention when he said something's on my heart.
So that's interesting that you mentioned that, because I thought the same thing when he was saying that in between every song. First of all, he was like sounded incredibly grateful in between each song. Like,
Yeah, I noticed that.
Thanking everybody in the building, just, for being there, and saying
literally every single
Yes.
song, you were thinking like, are they wrapping up? Like every time,
Yeah.
he was just.
he's like, "Thank you so much. God bless you. Thank you so much." And then who
Well, it was like he was walking in humility. Like we don't deserve for you guys to. I mean, they've had several hits. I didn't follow them as a band very much, but we paid good money to come see you, and yet you're like thanking us tremendously for.
That struck me too, Chris, and I didn't expect it. And when it continued, I thought, this is different.
I thought
This
so
is
too.
different, and I mean musicians across the board. I mean, like I'm not just talking about, if you're going to put it on a scale of secular musicians and other musicians or Christian musicians, you just don't see that kind of attitude much at all. I don't anymore, and it's almost
No, you
like
don't.
for a lot of bands, it's almost like you should be honored that we're here, but it was completely different in the way they described it. And I was really impressed with that, just because he kept saying it, and I thought it's a reflection of an attitude. What he was doing was a reflection of an attitude.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just a rote thing he was doing. You could tell it was not, well, this is what we do between every song, but it was just like this is a reflection of an attitude he had. I loved it, and the same thing carried over to Creed. Three Doors Down first, and then Creed did the same thing. It was, and Creed maybe even sometimes took it up a notch. Scott did once or twice.
Yeah.
I thought.
Yeah, I thought at first it was just almost like a nervous tick that he just didn't know what else to say in between the songs, and then you just kind of realize that it wasn't. And then he got, what were they, probably 75% of the way through their set?
They closed out on Away from the Sun, right?
Yeah.
So it was really before like their last song. No, they did another. They did They did Kryptonite, which was like their big song.
Yeah,
after.
yeah.
So they did 2 songs after it.
Yeah, so they were through most of their set, and he got to this point. And this is what Chris was talking about. He's like, I want to talk with y'all about something that's on my heart tonight. And you're like,
Yeah,
if you've grown up in church, or you've gone to like the Christian concert, you've gone to Winter Jam. Okay, like
Yes.
this is where they start the,
Every head
the
bowed and every eye
Compassion
closed.
International.
Compassion International, like or donate to this and this or whatever, and you're like,
right.
well, and this dude's like talking about what is on my heart, like, okay, what's going on, and he stands, and y'all help piece this together from what you remember and all that stuff, whatever too. But the main gist of what he said, he's like, the most important thing that I can stand here from where I am tonight, that I can tell you where I'm standing, is that Jesus loves you, and I was like, yeah. Okay, so
He said Jesus Christ loves
yeah,
you.
Jesus Christ loves you, and so
The first thing he said was, "You are enough."
that's right.
yes.
That
And
was
so-
before he said.
Yes,
yeah,
and so you were like, I was like, hold up a second.
Yeah.
Okay. Where are we
That's
go?
right.
Like, are we going to go? That's what when he first said that, I was like, all right. Like, are you gonna take this all the way? It's like, or is it gonna be just like a feel good? Like, you're in. Like, how far are you gonna take this? And then that's when, he kept going on that for a little bit.
Yeah.
And then he started talking about before he said Jesus loves you, he mentioned something about Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he did.
Yeah, he did.
And I was like, okay, all right. So he's pulling out a biblical figure.
Yeah.
And like, once again, think back to the stage that like Derek kind of helped set up for us here. It's like so many people all around, like cussing everywhere.
Yeah.
Like constant smoke, right? Rising. And this guy is talking about Paul I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
On stage. And I was like, I missed some of what he was saying because I was just like frozen solid.
Yeah, well, he
And
was
I
just,
think we're conditioned to this stuff though, where people get up at these award shows and when they're like, I want to thank God, blah blah blah, but there's never any depth to it whatsoever. It's like it's as completely surface level as it gets. And it started out that way. You're thinking like, oh, this might just be another thing, but that's like what you're saying, that progression of him saying you are enough, and you're like, oh, we're okay. And then he starts talking about Paul, and you're like, and then he's literally goes like he's for 2.5 minutes he's sharing the gospel on stage, and you're like, that to me was like, this is unlike anything that I've seen in this setting, because he was not pulling punches, he wasn't trying to make it like this big inclusive thing that people always he wasn't watering anything down. It was like straight up gospel, and I was floored. I was not expecting that.
yeah, and sometimes those moments where they'll speak about the universe or kindness or God, and he wanted to talk about Jesus.
Oh yeah.
And when you talk about Jesus, you kind of throw everything else to the side, because it's no doubt who you're speaking about. And I was very proud of him for that.
I know, because so many people in this world are okay with God. A lot of people who aren't even Christian, they're okay with the thought of God. But so like the big one like that people kind of don't harp on, and it's because it's more controversial, is Jesus, because not a lot of people, not near as many people, are okay with Jesus.
So you guys, in that moment, things came together for me, because you guys were concerned that I was going to go to a rock concert, that, and Chris was quite sure I was going to go to a rock concert and maybe wouldn't get it, that kind of thing, because I have no experience in life and I've been protected and shielded all my life. So according to Chris, anyhow. But
I don't think anyone said
that. I didn't. Nobody said that. But
I don't think
this
anyone
whole
acted
idea,
that
we
way.
finally got you here. We got you this, and so I'm there, and I have my earplugs in. I have my earplugs in because I learned that years ago. We went to Newsboys, and we were right up front, and they had these stacks of speakers up front. And when I put a little something in my ear, I could hear the words and the music so well. So I thought I'll try that here, and so I did. And so I liked the music pretty much. Now, I liked it better with Three Doors Down and the last two groups. I liked it. I thought it was well done. Well done, and I'm not a music critic, but I thought it was well done. And so forth. Now, I did say this along the way, that this would be much better if they had the words up on the screen, because I couldn't get the words. And fortunately, you guys helped me. Sometimes you throw something on the phone, and that really helped me a lot to really enjoy the experience. But I told you when we came out from the concert, I get it. Let me tell you what I mean by that. What I got was this. I'm going to put it in a context for myself. I've been helped. I have a book that I got some years ago at a conference called Agents of Sabotage. And that guy on Three Doors Down was like a saboteur. He was like a saboteur, man. I mean, like, he snuck up on everybody. You know what I'm saying? He snuck up on every one of us with that message. I mean, me, you, who had a different experience because y'all knew them. I didn't know them before. I heard the name before, but I didn't know them. And I don't remember having listened to their music much, unless maybe I overheard you guys listening to it. But he was like a saboteur, man. And I love that kind of stuff, because that's the way I see myself sometimes in ministry, is going into environments where it's not expected, it's not normally universally accepted and going in there and being a saboteur. That's what I mean by I got it.
Yeah.
And I got it. There's two ways he was a saboteur. Worth was his attitude, which we've already described, and secondly, with his message. And I thought Scott continued it how in a different way when Creed came on. So what was his phrase was, he was a saboteur by saying, well, he said all of our songs, help me out. All of our songs point to God.
To the Creator.
To the Creator, to God, I think.
I think he said something.
All of our songs create to. So to me, that was a different type.
He talked about like how the songs were basically going to be a journey, is what he said.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
at the end,
That's
we're
right.
going to find him, is what
Yeah,
he was basically saying.
Right.
One thing that I also that took it again to another level, and this goes back to Brad Arnold is the lead singer for Three Doors Down. So they,
Okay,
you know,
okay.
they were
Brad,
back in
I
that.
don't
They were
remember
back
his
in that
name.
scene in the early 2000s. We talked about that. The band broke up because he had an alcohol issue and went to rehab and all this stuff, or whatever. And so, yeah, we were floored to find out or whatever. But he had people repeat back. I don't remember the full thing, but I know one part of it was "I am enough" because, and what was I can't remember.
I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was, but it also had something to do with Jesus again too, I think. And he had people saying these words back to him.
You have to think too, and I don't want to universally disparage Christian artists and act like no one is doing the same thing.
Yeah.
But you look at a lot of people who came up through Christian music, and the opposite thing happens.
Yeah.
Where this gave them, you know, the music, the stage, whatever, gave them the life that they have. And they're willing to take less and less quote unquote risk.
Yeah.
The bigger things get.
Yeah.
And so they have to make sure that
good.
the bigger that they get, the less that they think they'll alienate people.
It seemed like it.
But like, talk about like putting someone like him, knowing that there have to be thousands of people who were Three Doors Down fans who are atheists. Surely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just numbers.
People who were there.
Yeah. And just putting that on the line, willing to put that on the line and saying, I don't care.
So
what the result?
I don't know if I
is.
shared this with you guys or not, but I'm in a couple of like church Facebook groups for like worship leaders, and then like one for like sound engineers, whatever. And that night I got home, I was looking through and I saw that someone posted and was like, "Hey, I was at the Creed concert in Birmingham, Alabama tonight." And Brad Arnold shared the gospel from the stage. But he was like, I was floored by that. Could not believe it. And somebody replied, I think maybe who'd been like following, I don't know, whatever. And they said he's done that every night of the tour.
Wow, is that right?
He has done it from every time he's got up. Every night of the tour, he's gotten up and shared the gospel, no matter what city they were in, what have you.
Man, I love guys that do that kind of stuff.
Is there? I mean, we talk about like, because we're not on a stage, and you know, people listening, like you're probably not on a stage. You don't have that type of captive audience. We talk so much about, and so much of the church is about purpose and calling and finding your purpose and finding your call. Blah blah blah. It's like, but what he's doing right there, regardless of what his profession is, that is what he that's it. Like that's what it's supposed to look like in the middle of all of that stuff, in the middle of that scene that we described. Being like, I don't really care what you all have been doing tonight. I'm just going to tell you about Jesus.
Yeah. And it reminds me, if you go to Acts 17, what Paul did in Athens. You know, he saw a bunch of people that were philosophers and going on and on. And he said, I see that you have a tomb here, or whatever, an inscription to the unknown God. He said, let me declare him to you. That's exactly what Brad Arnold was doing. It was almost like he went from this unknown God, and Chris, to your point, is a lot of guys just keep it with the unknown, general, vague stuff, but he went right to the heart of it, and did it. But he did it in such a way that it didn't sound churchy. I love that about it. It did not sound churchy.
It didn't, but it completely grabbed like all of the air.
Yeah.
Right
That's
there.
right.
Because kind of like a couple of people have mentioned, you can people will kind of tiptoe around that sort of thing, and maybe just Derek, I think you said something. Maybe people will just kind of stick to God, thank God for this, all that kind of stuff. When you like cut straight to what Jesus did for you, and talk about Jesus directly, like there's a different. I mean, there's a whole. It's the whole thing about there being actual power in his name, right? Because it literally it changes the air, like when you say his name, especially in that kind of setting.
It does.
Because he's saying God bless you, thank you so much after every song, that kind of stuff, and we kind of catch on to that and like, okay, there's something a little different going on here, but then when he gets to that moment, it cuts right into it so that every single person in the room or in it there that night knows exactly what he's doing, and he's pulling like zero punches.
Can I just say one more thing about him talking about thank you? I think his thank yous set up a willingness to hear his message. Let me tell you what I mean by that. And I think that's consistent with what it says in Romans. Although they knew God, they neither glorified him as God nor gave thanks to him. And so I've often said in many sermons and teaching is that the first step away from God is an ungrateful heart, an ungrateful attitude. So if that's the case, the reverse is true. The first step back toward God is an expression of a thankful heart. And so and it brings tears to my eyes, and I'm sorry, I didn't know I was going to do that. But what he did was he demonstrated it by his thankful attitude, and then I could hear him. Had he been like he was some showboat who said, "You're just lucky that I'm here," then I think it would have been harder to hear that message, because the message of Jesus is that he was thankful to his Father, and so he demonstrated a thankful heart. Brad Arnold did it. Scott did too. Scott said thank you an awful lot too, I thought, and with Creed. And I was grateful for that too, because I heard a humility, a thankful, grateful heart. And I think that makes it easier for people to hear the message, because you don't come in with an arrogance. You don't come in with I'm better than you. You come in with thank you, because you're investing in me. Now I want to invest in you.
That'll preach.
Yes, 100%. That's spot on. And I think that's like what you said about that, setting the table for that. I wonder if that's something that even he did intentionally.
I wonder. It seemed to come out from spontaneously to me.
But obviously that's very clearly the Lord at work, and knowing knowing how to set the table for Brad as he goes into places like that. So
I have a question for you guys.
Yeah.
So you see people who come to know the Lord, and they say, I'm done with being a rock artist. I'm done with doing Miller Lite commercials. I'm done doing this and that. And then other people say, I'm going to be Jesus right where I'm at. And it's far be it for me to say what Jesus tells somebody to do. Yeah. Because it could be different for you and different for him. What are your thoughts on that?
About what?
Well, about how some people quit that. Like they might be a Hollywood actor, and they're like, you know what? I'm not doing that anymore.
Well, for example, with me, I worked for 20 years at UAB. That's a secular institution. But we didn't hesitate to talk about Jesus, to pray with folks. And sometimes these people be coming in, they were very unsuspecting. All I'm saying, Chris, is for me, I like putting myself in that situation, because sometimes you withdraw yourself from this and make yourself churchy, and then you can't even impact the people in those settings. So if I were to go into Miss Alex's story, maybe we should do that sometime. But Miss Alex's story was one just like that, where she said, should I withdraw myself from a certain environment? And I said, no, don't do it until God tells you to leave. So like you said, Chris, I think sometimes some people leave because they think it's the right thing to do, but sometimes they don't ask God if they should leave or not, in my opinion. Right. But I love it when people, and that's what I mean by being a saboteur.
I think some of it too is if you have someone who is maybe what they were doing puts them in a bad situation to possibly relapse into old behavior, then they might remove themselves from that situation.
Yeah, that's right.
But you could see like what he did, and where he's on tour with bands who, and like Creed, who I don't think it's not much. The band is not much of a party scene. I don't think they're out there like it doesn't seem like it. At least now these days, they're not out there getting loaded or anything after the show every night. Yeah. And so he probably knew like this is a good opportunity for me to do this without really putting myself into. So some of it, you might see people remove themselves from those sorts of things to say like, I don't want to. This is too much for me to relapse into old behavior. I'm not going to do it. Yeah. But I think if you can do like what he's doing, you absolutely stay in it for that reason. Yeah. For that very reason.
So the biggest compliments ever UAB was the boss I worked with was not a believer. But he told me one time, he said, Longenecker, before I met you, I didn't see any Christians around up in this courthouse and in this scene. He said, but since I met you, there's one crawling out from behind every rock. One of the best compliments I ever got. Right in the middle of a secular or unexpected environment. I love being in those environments. It's what I like to do. And that's why I admire Three Doors Down and Creed, even if I didn't know their music and I didn't know their words, but their attitude and what they did impacted me and encouraged me. I came away encouraged as much as if I had been to a church service where Derek and Eric led worship, but for a different reason. I wouldn't want that to be my worship stuff every Sunday morning, thank goodness. Yeah. I prefer you guys, but on a Wednesday night, it was fine.
Yeah, I think Chris kind of said it best. I'm not sure exactly how he put this when we were leaving out, but said something to the effect of like he didn't expect we were going to get preaching that night, but we did, and it was pretty awesome. So we wanted to share that experience with you guys and just really kind of, because it took it to heart for me, and when Chris brought this up and for the whole group here about how, being doing what we're supposed to do exactly where we are right now. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's to be the light for Jesus wherever we are right now. Mm-hmm. That's the call. That's the purpose, is to do that wherever we're standing in this moment. And that's what Brad did that night. And we're just, it really stood out for us, and we wanted to share that experience with you guys.
Correct.
Yep. So
thank you, Chris.
Yeah, I'm 6 feet from the edge, and I'm thinking.
No. Derek, would you pull this to a close, please?
Yeah,
before we have more music?
I'm unbelievably. I want to close this by thanking Chris for quote unquote, if I may, planning this episode tonight, and bringing this as something that we got to talk with.
As
you guys.
Crazy as they are on the front end, often his ideas do work out pretty good.
I think it worked out pretty good. So for Eric and Steve, our man Chris behind the cameras, I'm Derek.
How about a hand for Chris? Chris, thank you for planning it, Chris.
Yes.
Am I the only one clapping? No hand claps? Come on, here we go.
We'll see y'all next time.
We'll see you next time.
Yeah.